Hi everyone, I'm Dao Tuan Anh. Today I'll demonstrate Lab1 for Win 700, config Active Directory domain and forest. I have completed all 5 exercises and I will demonstrate the results of each exercise while explaining the methodology used. For exercise 14.1, creating a trial domain, let me restore to a snapshot one. As you can see, I'm in a snapshot one right now. So notice I'm logged into as a trial start administrator. This is a new trial domain. Let me open the Active Directory user and computer. As you can see in the Active Directory user and computer, we now have the trial.mysyndicatid.com as a trial domain under the parent mysyndicatid.com. The trial domain is fully functional with its own domain controller, DNS server, and global catalog. As you can see the storage VM is the domain controller. Now to answer the question in 14.1, how did you remote a member server to a domain controller? I remoted the member server to the following process. First, I installed the Active Directory domain services role using the active role. And now to answer the question in exercise 14.1, how did you remote a member server to domain controller? I remoted the member server to the following process. First, I installed the Active Directory domain services role using add role and filter wizard in Server Manager. After the role installation, I click the yellow notification flag in Server Manager and selected Remote this server to a domain controller. In the Active Directory domain services configuration wizard, I selected add a new domain to an existing forest. I specify mysyndicatid.com as the parent domain and trial as the new domain name, creating trial.mysyndicatid.com. I provided domain administrator credential mysyndicatid/administrator to authorize modifying the existing forest. I set the directory service restore mod password, config the net option, and completed the prerequisites check. Finally, I click install and remoted the server to a domain controller and automatically reboot the system. This created a two-way sensitive trust between the parent and trial domain. Next is exercise 14.2, remoting a domain controller, restoring a snapshot 2. As you can see here, I am snapshot 2 now. So after demotion, storage 1 is now a standalone server, it's no longer a domain controller. In the Server Manager, you can see the Active Directory services role has been removed. The computer is in the workgroup now, not join any domain. For question 2 in exercise 14.2, how did you demote a domain controller to a member server? I demoted a domain controller using the remove roles and filter process. In Server Manager, I open the Manage menu and click Remove Roles and Filter. When I attempt to deselect Active Directory domain services, Windows display a validation result dialog stating that the domain controller must be demoted before the role can remove. I click Demote this domain controller, which launch the demotion wizard. On the credential page, I select for the removal of this domain controller and click Next. I acknowledge the warning about removing DNS server and global catalog roles by selecting Proceed with removal. I set a new local administrator password. Finally, I click Demo with remove the domain controller role and automatically reboot the system, converting it to a standalone server. Next is exercise 14.3, installing a new forest. Let me restore to snapshot 3. Currently, I am in snapshot 3 now. Let me log in. Notice the login screen now shows the administrator. This is a completely new forest separate from my SenecaIT.com. Here you can see the atatum.com domain. This is the root domain of a new forest with no connection to my SenecaIT.com. Now let me open the Active Directory domain and just the domain functional level is currently Windows Server 2008 R2. For question 3 in exercise 14.3, which forest functional level were available? When creating a new forest, the available function level in domain controller option page were Windows Server 2003, Windows Server 2008, Windows Server 2008 R2, Windows Server 2012. I selected Windows Server 2012 R2. I selected the Windows Server 2008 R2 for both forest and domain functional level. Would we rate to the Windows Server 2012 in exercise 14.4? Note that Windows 2000 native mode is no longer supported in Windows Server 2012. Next is exercise 14.4, raising domain and forest functional level. Let me restart to the snapshot file. As you can see, I'm in the snapshot file right now. Let me log in. Let me open the Active Directory user and computer. Right click to the domain, right domain functional level. As you can see, the domain functional level is now Windows Server 2012 R2. Let me so Active Directory domain and just right click, trace. The forest functional levels has also been raised to Windows Server 2002 R2. For question 4 in exercise 14.4, what tool did you use to raise the domain functional level? Are you Active Directory user and computer? The specific step were open Active Directory user and computer from Server Manager tool menu. Right-click the domain name atatum.com. Select it, raise domain functional level. Select it, Windows Server 2012. Click raise and confirm the operation. For question 5 in exercise 14.4, what tool did you use to raise the forest functional level? Are you Active Directory domain and just? The specific step were open Active Directory domain and trust from Server Manager tool menu. Right-click Active Directory domain and trust at the root of the console. Select it, raise the forest functional level. Select it, Windows Server 2012. Click raise and acknowledge the warning that this process cannot be reversed. Raising functional level unlock advanced features like Active Directory recycle bin and dynamic access control. And finally is exercise 14.5, config multiple UPN services. Let me restore to the snapshot file. As you can see, I'm in the snapshot file right now. Let me open the Active Directory domain and trust. Right click to the Active Directory domain and trust. Select properties. Here's on the alternative UPN services tab. You can see I have configured 2 additional UPN services. The first one is litware.com. The second one is adatum.mysenecaid.com. These services allow users to log in with it. This allows users to log in with alternative domain names. For question 6, in exercise 14.5, what tool did you use to add alternative UPN services? I use Active Directory domain and trust. The specific step were open Active Directory domain and trust from Server Manager tool menu. Right-click Active Directory domain and trust at the root. Select properties on the Alternative UPN Services tab. type liquid.com, click add, then type adadum.mysenecaid.com, click add again, click OK to save. These alternative UPN services now appear as an option when creating or editing user account, providing flexible login option for user. User can use two login format. One is UPN format, another one is DAO level format. That's everything. Thank you for watching.